Do you like movies and games also? This and so much more, they all know. Vyse, Pyro, Lotus and friends, welcome to Corrective Consciousness.
Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 31. I'm your host, VyseTheBold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And I'm PyroJackFrost.
And we have another really great show here. First of all, I want to take it off the top here that Dracologist also made a new theme for us. So I really want to thank him. You will be hearing it later on in the week in the new episode of Reactive Consciousness. So once again, we love our fans, and we really, really want to thank everyone who's contributed thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, and so we will start by going forward with Pyro's week.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I finished another game. I'm pretty proud of myself. I
Good for
beat
you.
Final Fantasy 15.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm glad that I beat it, but it's kind of interesting. A lot of people say that Final Fantasy 15 is the opposite of 13, at least in the sense that the story in 13 starts very linear, then opens up near the end, and 15 is kind of the opposite. It opens up you can roam the world as much as you want, and then it gets more and more linear as you go. And I kind of feel like my enjoyment of the games was the same in a way, where in 13 I kind of liked it in the beginning, but I really liked it as it went on, whereas in 15 the more I played, the less I felt like I was actually enjoying it.
It was kind of like front-loaded, you know?
Yeah, and it's one of the things that just really felt weird is all the quests have a recommended level. The recommended level for the final area of like the game is like 35 or something, because that's if you did no side quests. Whereas I did almost all the side quests. I was level like almost 60.
Does the difficulty scale with...
no, not at all.
Yeah,
okay.
I guess if it
So
did,
is
there'd be
a
no such
cakewalk.
thing as a recommended level.
Yeah, so the end of the game was almost a cakewalk. And it was...
That's a shame.
Yeah, and the story just gets weird as you go too. It gets. I felt like I knew it was going to happen in the beginning, and then I guess I'm not complaining because it wasn't what I expected. It's more because of the way that it went. Just didn't feel interesting, I guess. I don't know. I'll probably still play it a little bit more. I'm kind of close to a platinum, so I might platinum it. I might not. I don't know. I know there's DLC coming out, so I'll probably take a look at those too. But as in terms of Final Fantasy 15, it was a pretty good game, and I do recommend it, if only just to play the first, let's say, 2/3 of the game where you're just hanging out and going on a road trip. After that, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a shame, because I feel like when Square makes a game, they don't like exactly know what they're doing. Like they don't have an outline. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't know that. like they just start making a game and see where it goes.
Yeah. Another
yeah.
part of it that was kind of annoying is it seemed very much. The director wanted to add things in it. So there was like one or two things that were completely different than the rest of the game, which is okay at times, but it didn't feel necessarily like one complete package. Since they changed things as you went.
Okay.
Whereas, like, if you think of Kingdom Hearts, the story is really messed up and really complicated and confusing, and who really knows what's going on. But the core gameplay is really, really fun and interesting.
And consistent.
And consistent. Whereas in 15, the core gameplay is okay, but then there's all these other things added on that it kind of takes away from the game itself.
Yeah, I really need to...
Sorry, you go.
I really need to play it more myself to see what my overall opinion is. I mean, I played the beginning, but it sounds like that's like the best part.
Yeah. The beginning part of the game is the best part, and I really started knowing that I was going to feel this way when I started doing the main missions, where a main mission took me maybe 10 minutes, which was the end of a chapter, basically. Like,
wow.
The game itself, I could probably have beaten in 10 hours.
Oh man, for a Final Fantasy game, that's quite short.
But when you include all the, I mean, I'm exaggerating, obviously, but
Okay.
the game itself took me 85 hours because of all the side quests that I did.
Yeah.
So, it's not a bad game. It's not a great game. It's not one of my favorite Final Fantasy. I'll say that.
What are your favorite ones? I'm just curious.
So I would have to say my favorite is 9.
Oh, really?
Just because
9, I think, is the creator of Final Fantasy's favorite.
Yeah, just because it kind of brings back the old feel of Final Fantasy, and I do like games where you equip weapons and kind of get skills based on using the weapons. After that,
Sorry.
After that, I would say maybe 7 and 12 are up there, and 6. Probably 6. 9 then 6, then probably 7 then 12.
Those are pretty popular choices. I would
yeah,
say.
definitely.
I was not a huge fan of 8 or 10.
I've only ever beaten 7, so I don't really have a good opinion of the series in that regard. The ones that I have played a decent amount, I like 5 a lot. But I can't say that it's like my favorite because I've never beaten it. Like, you know, like I don't know the entire game. So I'm gonna go through, hopefully in the next year or so. I want to go back and play some of the better Dragon Quest games and some of the better Final Fantasy games. And I want to start with Final Fantasy. I want to start with 4 and then move my way up.
4 was a good
1
one.
through 3. Yeah. Playing 1 through 3 is a little tough.
Yeah, I would actually say 1 through 3 are my least favorite, only because going back to them now is not as fun.
Well, it's like a devolution.
Yeah, 1 is just, it's super archaic. Even playing the updated versions of it is still not that much fun because, like, the story is very light. And even when it has the modern conveniences all, like, shoved into it, like, you know, your character won't attack the air if something died, and you had told it to attack it, you know. But 2 is probably people's least favorite for the people who have played it.
It's interesting, but the way that the whole battle system, the leveling up system works is just way too unnecessary.
Yeah,
I would say. And 3 is fun because it's the first job class one. But if you're gonna pick one that has job classes, 5 is a much better choice.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention, like, I don't have too much Final Fantasy experience. Like, I've watched a whole lot of Final Fantasy. Like, I've seen most of 8, a bunch of 10, a bunch of 12, a bunch of 6. But, like, the only Final Fantasy games I've actually played through were Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which is overly simplistic on purpose, and it's just a basic kind of, like, turn your brain off and just get through it game. I like it, but it's, you know, it's not up there with the greats. And Final Fantasy V. I had played it on an emulator at the time because there was no other way. Like, the GBA game hadn't come out yet or anything like that. It was a Super Nintendo ROM, but that was quite fun. Although if you want to max jobs out, that is a ridiculous amount of grinding.
Yeah, I always have, like, I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with Final Fantasy. Part of me really wants to play all of them and replay them every now and then, but the other part of me feels like they are very much, as a whole, people think they're better than they are.
Okay, you know, no, I know what you mean. Like, they're cool because they're Final Fantasy, but now that it's been, like, you know, a decade and a half, you could kind of see the cracks in the armor a little bit.
Yeah, like, I enjoy the series overall, but it's just, whenever I play them, I just get kind of, there haven't been many of them that I've actually enjoyed throughout the whole game, and that I feel, and like a lot of them, I feel like I had to push myself to beat.
Yeah, I think I have more enjoyment. Well, I mean, just for the sake of the fact that this is one of those games that really enforces grinding. Like, you don't have to, but you do, you should, like with the older games. So, like, I found that I think I have more enjoyment watching other people play the games. Even if I'm watching them grind, I think I enjoy that a little more than actually doing the grinding myself. Like, even with Mystic Quest, which is Final Fantasy Easy Mode, there was still some grinding through the dungeons and battles arenas and stuff like that. Even then, it's just kind of like press a button, and like most of it, like, you have to heal sometimes, but really you're attacking, so A to attack that one, A to attack that one, press A, wait, press A, press A. It's very mindless. Even in the better Final Fantasy games, that's just mostly what you're doing. Unless you're fighting overpowered enemies or a boss or something where you actually have to use strategy, you're mostly just kind of hitting them with a stick until they fall down, and it's really kind of mind-numbing.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's what I feel. Another game that I talked about last week that I've been playing a little bit more of is the Fire Emblem game for the phones. And
oh yeah, okay.
I am getting bored of that really quickly because there's very little content, and it's really hard to consistently feel like you're accomplishing something in that game. Our other friend, Mr. Ryu, started playing it too, and I was telling him that it's fun for like the first week, and then it gets kind of annoying. He's like, "I'm only gonna play it when I'm like preoccupied." Yeah, on the toilet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It does seem like to be like one of those games. Like, I mean, that seems to be the case with a lot of phone games. They're designed not to be a particular time sink. Like maybe you get paid to get stuff done, but it's really like, what am I doing right now? I'll break out Fire Emblem Heroes. Let's go. A couple minutes.
Yeah,
You know?
and I don't know like what I would fix, but it's interesting to compare it to the other game that I mentioned last week, Valkyrie Connect, where I keep playing that every day and I always find stuff to do. But in Fire Emblem, I feel like it's a chore because leveling up takes forever after a while. If you don't have a good party because your random rolls weren't that great for characters, then you're kind of stuck.
I was gonna say, I heard it's like the waifu roulette wheel.
Yeah, it's I'll probably still play it every now and then, but I feel like I'm only doing that because it's Fire Emblem.
That's a shame.
If it was not called Fire Emblem Heroes, if it was some new game, I probably wouldn't have been playing it after like anymore.
Well, yeah, it's got the name. Like, you should be playing. It's Fire Emblem. I gotta look at the Fire Emblem, but yeah.
It stinks that Nintendo didn't like look into it a little bit more and said, hey, you know, we need this to have a little bit of the more Nintendo polish that people are expecting, you know?
Yeah, and I saw that it is made by Intelligent Design or Intelligent Systems, whatever they're called, the people who made Fire Emblem.
Sure.
So it is an actual Fire Emblem game, but I think that they were pushing the gacha system too much and pushing this is a phone game, let's monetize it too much.
That's a shame.
Yeah, that's like the first thing that turns me off in a game. Like, I'm one of those people who, with few DLC exceptions, my mindset tends to be, I bought the game, that's what I'm paying for. Like, I don't want to have to pay to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and like I wouldn't have minded if they said, "Hey, give us $20 or $30 even, and you have the whole game."
Yeah, exactly.
And like, here's all the characters. I don't know how they would do it, but I wouldn't have minded paying them more money up front for an actual phone Fire Emblem game.
Yeah, that's a shame because whenever I like playing games on my phone, but I don't like playing games on my phone. Like, I like the idea of being able to play a game and this is a thing that I automatically have in my pocket, right? But I hate the types of games that are on phones.
Yeah.
It's a shame too because I would play like a lot more. Like there are a few games that I absolutely love. Like I love the puzzle game Threes. I think that's really cool. I like a lot of adventure games on phones, but I like almost no RPGs because they all have that same stupid system, and I feel like, you know, just like you guys have been saying, like Chaos Rings, or you know, is a game that was done right for phones. I don't know if you guys ever played that one, but that's a Square Enix RPG that was made specifically for phones, and you could just buy the full game and then that's it, and it's a good game. Which game was this again? It's called Chaos Rings. There's like a trilogy of them, I believe. There's like a prequel one, you know, the normal one, and there's a sequel. So I think they have a premium price too, like, you know, they're like $12, but it's a full-fledged like Square Enix RPG without like extra stuff that you need to buy. It's just like a game, you know? It's pretty cool. So yeah, so that's my thought about that, and I have a feeling this time next week I'm either going to have uninstalled it or played it so little it doesn't matter anymore. I hear you. The last thing I want to mention really before we move on to Lotus Prince is I saw the Lego Batman movie,
Nice.
Lego being one of my favorite, other than Transformers, one of my favorite toy series. It wasn't as good as the Lego movie, but it was really good. And it worked as marketing, because I left the movie theater saying, like, I kind of want to buy some of these sets.
Don't blame you.
But yeah, so that was my week. We can move on to Lotus Prince.
Okay. Before I get into my week, actually, one thing I wanted to throw out really quickly, just because I remember when we had one of our meetings when you were in New Jersey, and someone said that it kind of drives her crazy when we like kept interrupting each other, but then whatever got interrupted wouldn't be followed up on, and it just kind of left dangling. So that thing when Pyro, you had said way earlier today that you enjoy games where, like Final Fantasy IX, where you equip weapons and you get the abilities of that weapon or something like that. Therefore, I don't know if you've tried them, but you might enjoy the Disgaea series, because the equipment level ups are like arguably more important than the character level ups.
I've played the first 4 Disgaea games.
Oh, okay.
And I enjoyed them, but at the same time, it's way too much of a time sink.
It really, really is. I mean, you can beat the game at level 100, but for the post-game stuff, it's like you want to be level like 7,000.
Yeah, so I'm starting to kind of get out of those sorts of games.
Yeah, the Nippon Ichi games really are like grind fests that put Final Fantasy to shame. Okay, so anyway, for my week, it's going to be kind of like what you, Pyro, have been doing with Final Fantasy 15 up until today. Like, it's another Final Fantasy 15 update. For me, it's another Yakuza Dead Souls and Witcher update. So with Yakuza Dead Souls, I completed a lot of stuff. I finished Goda Ryuji's segment, so I'm finally up to Kazuma Kiryu. He's the main character of the Yakuza series, and Dead Souls is doing the same thing as Yakuza 4. There are 4 characters to play as, and Kiryu's the last one, so it's like, oh, finally, Kiryu, he's back, you know, that kind of thing. I gotta say, though, his entrance in the game, it's not, like, it's a serious entrance, but it was kind of funny to me for what it was. Like, it did so many things in such a way to really, like, push how awesome Kiryu is. It kind of ended up being funny, and it was not a funny scene at all. Like, Kiryu's always been a badass, right? In Yakuza 1, you have to work your way up to prove that you're a badass. But in Yakuza, I think it was 2, you know, you start by walking into the Tojo HQ, and it does one of those things where there's a giant crowd, like an organized crowd of people on each side, and as you pass in front of them, they bow. So there's kind of like a wave of bowing, and it looks super badass, and you're like, yeah, I'm playing as this guy. But Dead Souls actually managed to far outdo that with less, and it was amazing. Like, this is the point where the town Kamurocho is like 70 or 80% quarantine zone now. Like, it's a freaking disaster.
Wow.
Yeah, like, if you look at the map, like, the pink zone is just everywhere, and you're like, oh,
Do they realize
no.
that Japan is an island and they could just leave?
Yeah, but, like, I mean, it's a zombie outbreak. Like, that's a big migration. They want to try to deal with it, and it's just not working. So this is great. Like, Japan doesn't have an official military. At least in the game, they have what's called the SDF force. I guess the F is
that's
force.
real.
Yeah, the self-defense force. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's basically Japan's, like, not military.
National Guard.
Yeah.
It's their National Guard.
Yeah, so they're the
It's
ones
their
who've
self-defense force. That's what it stands for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, self-defense force. So they're the ones who've been trying to set up these giant walls to block out zombies and stuff like that. And so Kiryu finally comes to the islands because Haruka's in trouble, because the little girl he looks after is like a hostage in like every damn game, and that's just become like a running thing, I guess. So he shows up in Kamurocho, and he's like, okay, I'm here to save her. But it's so amazing because he's walking up slowly and silently, and nobody sees him. There's just, like, the SDF force is trying to block off people with their riot shields, and there's a bunch of reporters who are trying to, like, yell at them for questions, like, damn it, man, you gotta give us something. We can't just be blocked out of here. Japan has laws, damn it. Because, like, there have been rumors that the reason it's being blocked off is because of a zombie outbreak, but nobody really knows for sure, except for the people really close to the incident. So they're trying to keep this thing under wraps because, you know, freaking zombie outbreak, like, don't cause a panic. So these reporters are like, damn it, man, we have laws, let us in. And, like, one of the reporters kind of glances back for some reason because he notices you coming, and then he's just like, wait, oh my god, is that... And he, like, looks at his boss, and all of a sudden all the reporters just stop, and they part way for you. They're just like, oh geez, this guy. And like you just keep walking up silently, and one of the SDF guys runs up to you. He's like, hey sir, you can't just, and is like, his boss grabs him and he's like, no, let him go. That's Kazuma Kiryu, the dragon of Dojima. And everyone's like, oh my god, like, it's so great. Like, it's the most amazing thing. And like, you're not doing anything. And so you eventually walk past the SDF guys up to the big quarantine wall. And other than giant zombies busting them open, there's really no way to get in. Like, it's a quarantine wall. But you must have gotten Majima's help, because these two, like, pink dump trucks, and the only time I've ever seen a pink dump truck was when Majima was driving one in, like, Yakuza 2 or 3 or something. So these two pink dump trucks, just like kamikaze, they just, like, crash into the wall to bust it open, because you got help somehow. So these guys are like, you got it, Kiryu, and you're like, thanks, guys. So you start walking up, and one of the SDF guys at this point tries grabbing you by the wrist, and he's like, I can't believe what you've just done. And you kind of do, like, a reverse grab and, like, lock his wrist and start, like, squeezing it. And you're like, you don't want to touch me. You don't know what I might do. And you start, like, squeezing it until it hurts, and then you let it go and walk in. And at this point, it goes to gameplay. Now, I've said before that Yakuza Dead Souls is, like, there are nobody picks fights with you because it's a gun game. So the whole game is sort of an over the shoulder, not quite over the shoulder, but close enough shooter. But you walk in, and in the cutscene, you like shoulder check a zombie and just crack him in the face and just send him flying. And of course he gets back up, but it's just like, yeah. But then it goes to gameplay, and you actually play with like old school Yakuza controls where you like press X to slightly dodge to the side and square punches and Y kicks. And I'm like, what? And you're just like playing with old fighting controls. And it was the weirdest freaking thing. And I'm like, well, let me equip my gun. And there's just no equipment. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm actually just fighting zombies with Kiryu. It's like the greatest opening they could have possibly done. And like,
so Lotus,
yeah.
I just have a quick question here.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any like mini games like Boxilios or anything like that?
Yep.
Yep,
they still have Boxilios. You could still go to hostess clubs. You could still go fishing. You could still go golfing. You could still do karaoke. Like, all of these things are open. It's just that when they're in the quarantine zone, the door says closed on them, and when you go up to it, people are like, zombies are here, help us. So when you kill a set amount of zombies, then they just reopen for business in the quarantine zone. It's stupid, and it's amazing. So they're just running their business literally in the zombie like apocalypse zone. So it's like not like the buildings are like blown to hell. Like, the city looks like utter garbage now. Like, it's horrible. But these buildings are fine. They just run. You can still go to bars. It's like, what? It's kind of fantastic. So it really is a Yakuza game. It's just a zombie shooter. But like, all the other elements are there, and the cutscenes are still done seriously, like in the same Yakuza style. Like, it really has the heart and soul of a Yakuza game, which is amazing. And shortly after that fight, you get your gun and everything. But I just love that opening. It's like, what a great opening. Like, this is Kiryu. He's the coolest. Like, it was amazing. So that's where I am now. I got to do Kiryu stuff. At this point, I just got to level up my partners and do my side quests, and then I can move on with the story. And I'm getting close to endgame because Kiryu is the last main guy you play as. And if it's like Yakuza 4, then you play as the first 4 guys. Then you have like a final chapter where I guess you could switch among any of them to cover things you've missed. So that's probably going to happen in the end of this one too. The only other thing I'll say about this game is that the Yakuza games have always been good about callbacks. And I mean, like, ridiculous callbacks. Like, remember back in the first game on the PS2? Like, Yakuza 4 called back to that. And it's like, what? Like, who's going to remember this? So, Yakuza Dead Souls does the same thing. There is this one boss in Yakuza 1 who, like, wields 2 guns, and he's really annoying to fight because guns in Yakuza 1 are horrible for you, unless you're wearing body armor, because just a bullet just knocks you down, and it's terrible. And this guy always, like, rolls and shoots, so he's really annoying to fight and dodge, and he's just a pain in the ass. But his introduction is his boss fight, and then you beat him and he's gone. So he's actually a really forgettable boss. But in Yakuza 3, he's not part of the plot at all, but there's a whole sub-story mission you can do that's optional, where it turns out he's the big boss of it, and he wanted revenge on you for beating him, and it's like, that guy? Really? well, like, I don't even remember his name. Well, he's actually in Dead Souls as well. Like, in one area, you could see him getting attacked by zombies, so you save him. And he's just like, God damn it, of all people to be saved by, you, the guy I want dead. But like I said, in Yakuza Dead Souls, you can get partners that you can just run through the quarantine zone with. They're just another gun, basically. and this guy will actually join you as a partner, like, until the zombie apocalypse blows over, at which point he's going to go back to trying to kill you. So you can actually play with him. It's amazing. Like, remember this guy again? I'm like, yes, I do this time. It's just really funny because after you save him, he says, like, now remember, once we're done with this, you know, like, I want you to know that gunning you down is at the top of my list. In fact, it's my whole list. And I'm like, yes. So I'm super happy about just the weird nods. Like, this game, like, the Yakuza series remembers some weird stuff. Like, remember that one boss toward the end of Yakuza 1 who's back in some other game? Like, it's just really bizarre. So that's Yakuza Dead Souls. I'm having fun with it. You know, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite Yakuza games, but it definitely feels like a Yakuza game, and I'm happy about that. Obviously, it's non-canon, but it's really fun.
Are you going to play through Binary Domain? I'm just curious.
There's so many freaking games. Like, I want to say yes, but, like, when am I going to do it? You know, with every single game anyone asks me about.
I just figured that you might want to play it just because it was made by the same guys, you know?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's kind of like their attempt at making a shooter.
Huh, okay. And as for the other game, I can be, I think, a little quicker about this one. I'm moving my way through The Witcher. I'm on Chapter 2, and I think I'm getting toward the end of Chapter 2. Like, the prologue was obviously really short. Chapter 1 was longer, but I made it longer because I did some grinding and I was trying to do all the side quests. But if you really want to just get through it, it can be quick. It's just that the boss of Chapter 1 is pretty brutal, but Chapter 1 can be quick-ish. But Chapter 2 is where the game really starts opening up. And you're in, like, instead of some podunk town that, like, you can run around, like, in a loop on, like, dirt path, this is a proper town that has all sorts of different buildings. There are people walking all over the streets. Like, it really feels like a bigger world. And I get the feeling the game's going to open up even more than this, but compared to Chapter 1, this is kind of like the game's real wow moment. There's just so much to do and see. It's really cool. There are, like, little sub-dungeons in the place, like the sewers. You could fight a bunch of, like, drowner enemies. There are some caves, you know, that kind of stuff. So there's really a lot to look at and take in. And side quests galore. So I've really been enjoying that. And the game's starting to introduce a sort of undercurrent that's going throughout the game, which is, like, it's racism with humans versus non-humans. Like, non-humans being dwarves and elves. So there's, like, a non-human section of town and stuff like that. And occasionally you could see NPCs muttering to themselves without you prompting them, where dwarves are like, how are we supposed to assimilate with them when they won't assimilate with us? And it's just like, oh, man. And there's going to come a point where I'm going to want to choose to align myself with the Order of the Flaming Rose, this group of knights, or the Skull Tile. I think that's how it's pronounced. I might be a little wrong, but it's this group of, like, non-human rebels that are, like, fed up with this bullshit. So it's actually really interesting because both sides definitely have good things to offer. And this is not a matter of black and white, but you gotta pick one. So I'm interested to see where this is going to go. But in the meantime...
Do you have any idea of what you're thinking of right now?
Well, I'm using a guide to get through a lot of the game, so I'm probably going to choose whatever just profits me more and just see how the plot plays out from there. But depending on how the game presents the choice, that might also affect me anyway, because the game really does try to make it in such a way that when there are big choices offered, it's not like, oh, you should probably choose this one. Like, they try to make it pretty even, so I'm interested to see where this is going to go. But in the meantime, I have a really, really interesting case I'm working on. The prologue of the game is based on this evil group called the Salamandra attacking your fortress. So you manage to fight them off, but you got to stop these guys. They're a really big deal. You know, whenever you mention them in Chapter 1, people are like, don't mention that name here. Like, you want to get killed? And in Chapter 2, there's still that kind of vibe going on. But what's really interesting is that I found that the leader of the Salamandra is around. And in fact, he's one of the NPCs I've talked to. So the big deal right now is I have to find out who it is. And there are various reasons to suspect most of the people involved. Like, the dwarf is a non-human. He might have a grudge against me for being human. There's this alchemist who's just a crazy alchemist, and, like, he looks just kind of loony. He could be the bad guy. There's this punk who leads a bunch of thieves, and he's very obviously, like, a badass who just goes around killing people. He seems like a good choice. There's a shady money dealer who deals in all sorts of large banks and stuff, and like he does businesses greater than you could comprehend, so like he seems like a good choice. Like there's really, like, you can't just guess your way out of this one. And what's interesting is that there's actually a private investigator in the world of The Witcher. That threw me for a loop. And he's kind of like a Sherlock Holmes analog in that, number one, he's a PI in a world that really doesn't have PIs. You know, like Sherlock Holmes himself said, "Oh, I do a job nobody else does," because why would they? And that's kind of this guy. Also, he employs at least one kid because nobody suspects children. Like, I walk around his house and this little kid's like, "Hey, you should talk to the Detective Raymond. He's got news for you." So, and Sherlock Holmes employs a bunch of little kids because no one suspects children to get intel. And also, this guy takes this drug called Phystech, which is a white powder, and Sherlock Holmes famously did cocaine. So it's, it's just a really, I don't know if he's supposed to be a Sherlock analog, but I bet you he is. There was one little conspiracy I found that was really interesting, though. There's this one prisoner who I wanted to interrogate that would probably have some information on who the bad guy is, but all of a sudden he died, and we're trying to find out the cause of death because the timing was a little too convenient. And we see all these sword wounds, but we're like, that's way too obvious for someone who wants us to lose his trail. So it turns out that when we did his autopsy, it turns out that he died because there are these like insect eggs that are laid like up your nose, like the flies, these like horrible like desert flies. I think they are. They fly up your nose and lay their eggs, and you die later. It's like how insects kill other insects, but this one can affect humans. But the thing is, the flies are not native to this region at all. So what the hell happened? Well, it turns out that, like some other drugs, Phystech is used in medicinal purposes sometimes for like, you know, like how morphine, people can become addicted to it, but it's supposed to be used as a relaxant. So this Phystech was supposed to be used to calm the guy down. So what had happened was, I said it's a white powder. Someone just took a few of the fly eggs and put it into the Phystech, and you would never tell the difference. So the guy just just snorted it, and it's like, that's amazing. So I'm trying to find out who did that. At this point, I know who the bad guy is. I know I won't tell because it's way too interesting, and for anyone who wants to play the game themselves. But at this point, I know who the bad guy is. Now I just have to lure him out to a location that is advantageous to me, because the head of the Salamandra is a mage, and like you do, like he's powerful enough to beat your mage friend in the beginning of the game, and I'm not a mage. So I'll get the living crap beaten out of me if I just pick a fight. So I'm trying to lure him into a situation that is advantageous to me. And that's where I am right now. So I'm doing side quests, but when I'm done with that, I'm going to see how this plays out. And I'm super excited. Because earlier in The Witcher, I was playing and I'm like, this is a fun game. But now I'm actually invested in what's happening, as opposed to like just the gameplay. So it's really growing on me. But I'm definitely using a guide to pick up all sorts of items and side quests and stuff.
I really want to play it myself.
It's so exciting.
I'll be joining you.
It's great because I hear that, you know, 2 and 3 are like way better. So it's like, whoa, okay. At this point, I see how the game is aged, of course, but it's still a lot of fun. So I'm really hyped that like it only gets better from here. It's like Yakuza. I loved Yakuza 2. And then they're like, oh, did you know that 4 is even better? And I'm like, what? Really? And 4 was better. 4 was amazing. And now I hear that 5 is even better. And I'm like, oh my god. So I love hearing that I really have something good to look forward to. And even with The Witcher and the Yakuza games I'm playing right now, I'm having enough fun as it is. So this is, you know, great news for me. So,
real cool.
Yeah, so that's been my week. So how about you, Vyse?
I only played a couple games because I'll probably go into this later on the week, but I've been moving a lot of my stuff, so that I've been packing a lot of it up. That way I can prep myself so I can move into my new apartment. So a lot of my free time has just been time in between, you know, getting all that stuff done, you know, when I'm exhausted, like from picking stuff up and moving it around. So I've only done some of the old favorites of mine, like I've been trying to get better at Mushihimesama Futari, and I actually have gotten through the second level without getting hit at all.
Nice. So how many levels are there?
There's 5 levels in most
so you're
cave
about
games.
40% of the way done with perfecting.
So, actually, that's a big feat in a cave game.
Yeah.
I would say getting even through one level, even on like original mode.
Yeah, it's like how I felt when I could beat the first 2 stages of Metal Slug 3, I think, without getting hit.
That's crazy.
Metal Slug 3 is really difficult too.
Which is the one that has the mummies? The first one with the mummies. Is that 2 or 3?
That's 3, and that also has the spitting zombies in it.
Yeah, I was able to beat the first 2 stages without dying in that game, and that was a feat in and of itself.
Yeah, so like these games are really difficult, and you only really get like the best scores if you can get through it without getting hit and or without bombing as well. So bombing is better than getting hit. So you know, if you're freaking out and you think that you are gonna get hit, just bomb.
Yeah, I remember you saying that last time we were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I could get through the first 2 levels without getting hit at all and without bombing. So that's a pretty big feat. And I'm also playing it I'm playing the Black Label version, which is like the hardest version they came out with. So that they have other modes within it as well. I'm playing original mode, which is like the easiest mode within the hardest version of the game, but it's still really difficult. Let's just put it that way. And I'm pretty proud of the progress that I'm making. I've been using my Obsidian joystick to play, and it's just one of those games you have to keep playing in order to get better at.
Yeah.
And I actually was playing the iOS version of that earlier this week, and I actually was able to 1cc.
Hey.
Oh, nice.
The iOS version's a lot easier.
Oh, it is?
I would say. Well, it's still a feat, but I would say it's a lot easier in the fact that your ship or your character moves the same pace all the time, whereas if you have lasers selected in the arcade version of the game or the 360 version of the game, you move slower. That's part of the limitations of using the laser. The laser is more powerful, but it makes you slower. And it also makes you more accurate, whereas in iOS, it kind of just traces where you're moving your finger.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can just trace through the bullets, basically.
You're moving at the same pace all the time. So and you're super accurate. It's a lot easier to move your ship around like that than it is to move it around with a joystick. It just is. It's more intuitive. So you could be a lot more accurate. But I'm working harder and harder at beating the quote unquote real version of the game, you know. So I'm doing that. I played a little bit of Darius Burst Chronicles Saviors, which is a great game.
Is that one of the fish ones?
Yeah, okay. All the Darius games are.
That I wasn't sure if the Darius games were the fish ones or not.
Yeah. This is the most recent game in the series. It's for PS4 and Steam. And they also have an arcade version of it, and it's really, really good. It's probably the best Darius game they ever made. It's a really good game. It has the laser tug of war mechanic from the earlier
I was going to ask
like
about that.
Darius.
I love that. Even though I'm not a shooter guy, that was such a cool mechanic.
And this is a different type of shmup. This is a game that I would recommend for more beginners. It's not a bullet hell. It's not an easy game, but it's not the same.
Yeah,
you know, it has. First of all, it's a lot easier to dodge the bullets, and it has a lot more lead up time. A lot of the bullets can be deflected, and it also has shields.
It's more like Gradius or R-Type than the bullet hell games, right?
Yeah, the pacing's a lot more deliberate, I would say. Than frantic like the bullet hell games. So I would recommend this is a shooter that anybody could play and kind of get the hang of shmups. And there's so many different versions that you can play, and there's also a lot of difficulty levels. Like with Darius games, you have this tree of levels to pick from. If you keep going up, you can go up or down at the end of each level, and if you keep going up, you're picking the easy mode.
Okay.
And then if you keep going down, it's the harder mode, and then everything in between. So
you can choose how difficult you want it to be, almost.
Exactly, and this one's up to 4 player, which is really neat. And it's a feast for the eyes, and the scoring systems are easy to understand. So you clear a wave and you get a bonus. So like just clear a wave of enemies. Every enemy, every time you clear a wave, you add to your multiplier. So it's pretty easy to understand. It's a lot of fun, and there's tons and tons of content. Like I was saying earlier, with earlier in the month with the DLC for that game, it's obscene the amount of DLC and content that's in this game, and how good it is. And the amount of thought put into each bit of content, and it also has some neat online stuff. So,
what systems is it for?
It's for PS4 and Steam.
Okay.
So if I'm gonna recommend, there's also a Vita version too. If I'm gonna recommend a version of the game, I would say get the Steam one.
Okay, that's what I was planning on.
Yeah, the Steam one has a slight advantage over the PS4 version in that it has the dual monitor mode. Just in case you ever get crazy enough to have a dual monitor setup. And it's more accurate to the actual representation of the arcade version, which has 2 monitors itself.
Okay.
So the PS4 version has, the PS4 has no capability to do that. So that's really the only major difference. And there's also a physical copy coming out for the PS4. That's kind of cool, but I would say that the Steam version's the way to go. So definitely look forward to that. If you are thinking about getting into shmups, that's a good place to start. Mm-hmm. It is a full-priced game, but it's worth it. It's a really great game. So other than that, I picked up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutants in Manhattan.
Have you gotten a chance to play it?
I haven't gotten a chance to play it yet, but I did want to bring it up because it's one of those games that I wanted to tell people about. Like it's not the best game in the world, but it's a fun platinum game.
Yeah, I was upset when you mentioned last week that it's no longer on sale. I had to look on Steam to just double check, and I was very upset because I was planning on buying it, and I kind of want it digital and on my PC.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I wanted to buy it on Steam. I buy most games that way, and it's totally taken off of the services. And it when I had checked last, it was like it had been taken off a week before. So it was like in January that it was taken off. So definitely our fans who are into platinum games like we are, and also like decent Ninja Turtle games, I would definitely recommend picking up the PS4 version. It still hasn't hit like a super expensive high yet. I don't think people are aware that it's disappeared off the digital services yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping it pulls a Deadpool, where it got pulled off, but then it was just because of licensing, and eventually they'll get it settled and it'll come back again.
Yeah, I hope so. But in the meantime, I picked up the PS4 version. I think it was only like $25 used at GameStop. Well worth it. So I'm going to play that in the future. And I also have given up on trying to fix my Neo Geo home console.
Oh, really?
So I sent it to a modder. A few months ago, people have known that have been listening, and he was able to fix everything except for the sound. There is absolutely no sound coming out of the system. It has a corrupt chip. So I sunk all this money into fixing up this like bum system, and it outputs perfect video now, but I've given up on it. I was going to give it back to my friend. It turns out that he had a fight with the guy who sold it to him.
What?
Yeah, so I told my friend that this was the issue with, this system had all these issues. For people that aren't long-term listeners, this system was, like, Neo Geos are, like, $400 systems. So, like, I was happy to receive it in any condition, but there was a lot of things wrong with it. It had a missing headphone jack, which is important with the system because it's the only way of getting stereo sound out of it.
Oh, like the Genesis?
Yeah, exactly. It had no cables with it, so I had to buy cables separately. It had a broken power switch that somebody had put like a bum, like 3D printed one in there that was no good. It wasn't designed correctly. it just had tons and tons and tons of issues. It had a fake BIOS chip in it, UniBIOS chip, all these things. And I had sent it to a modder to get all these things fixed, and I had bought all these things, including getting like a headphone jack for it and all this stuff. And I did all this work to try to, get it in a working condition. And it just got to the point where it has a problem with one of its chips. Where am I going to get one of those?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably look on eBay. I'm pretty sure there's places that have it, but they're probably really expensive.
No, you would need to pry it off of an old board.
True.
There's no way. There's no way. So I was done with it, and apparently his friend who had sold it to him basically apologized, and he's like, dude, I'm sorry. I think I gave you one of my like broken systems. Mm-hmm. It's like, dude, I don't know, but I think he just called you out on your crap. But he ended up refunding him, so I gave my friend back the system just so he could like return it to him or whatever he needs to do. But I sunk like $100 into trying to fix this thing, thinking, hey, maybe I got a $400 system for $100, that kind of thing. But it just didn't work out. So, but I still have my Omega, which is a consoleized arcade version, which is plays all the same games, and I'm more than happy with just that. So I'll be okay with that. Now, one last thing I wanted to mention is you guys know that I've been getting into my joysticks lately, and I have the Obsidian for the newer systems, and I actually just got basically like a joystick enclosure that's meant for custom projects, and it's cool because I could put the multi-console Cthulhu board in it, which is used for classic systems like Super Nintendo, Nintendo, Genesis, Saturn, and GameCube, and PlayStation, and Saturn all run on it. So it's like the perfect enclosure for that kind of thing. And I've been trying to track down the cables for each system. And I'm basically going to make this system, this joystick exactly the way I want it, because you put your own buttons and stick in it, and I order all this stuff. So I'm looking forward to taking pictures of the process of making the stick and showing it off and using it on my old systems, because like a lot of old shmups require really quick button presses, and the joystick is not adequate. Like the stock controllers are not adequate for it. So like for instance, the Star Soldier games are actually like rely on super rapid pressing of buttons, and the D-pad just doesn't cut it on the original Nintendo. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to using this joystick specifically for that game series. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope it turns out well, because it's been a project I've been working on, trying to get it exactly the way I want. So having said that, we can move on to my weigh-in. So I lost another pound this week.
Hey,
nice.
I'm at 221.
Progress.
So made a progress. The funny thing is I didn't really watch myself this week, which is kind of funny. I maybe you know what it is I've started getting into such good habits that I don't need to try all that hard anymore.
Yeah, I feel like
I kind of just
that's what
choose
it comes
the
down
best
to.
thing. Yeah. So I think I'm starting to make progress in terms of mental stuff and habits. So I can't wait to hit below 220. It's coming. So that'll be a huge goal for me to hit. So I'm looking forward to next week. See if I make any progress here. Now, I believe we can move on to questions here.
Yes, indeed. I had said last week that Jason Lee had a bunch of questions that we didn't have time for all of, so we can, I think, pick up where we left off. So this one is, now that From Software have supposedly finished with Dark Souls, would you like to see Bloodborne 2, or see them move to a new IP or genre, or do you not care? With me, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing a new IP or genre, because From Software has kind of moved around a bunch of times in the past. Not that I would complain if I saw a Bloodborne 2, you know?
Yeah, I feel like since I just beat Bloodborne, I would actually really enjoy a Bloodborne 2. I'd be curious where they would take the story from there, since one of the big twists of Bloodborne was in the middle of the game. They can't do that again in Bloodborne 2.
That's a good point.
Because anyone who's played it would know what's going on, and anyone who hasn't played it, I don't know how they do that. But I would like to see them make another game like Bloodborne, a Souls game that is much more fast-paced than the Souls games.
Yeah, I know basically that this subgenre of games like Souls-likes is starting to become bigger. I mean, you have Neo coming out really soon.
It's already out.
Yeah, it's actually out.
It's already
yeah.
out. Mm-hmm. Okay, so and I believe it's getting great reviews too.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like them to take a break. I think they absolutely will come back to that genre. I don't ever think that, this is the series and type of game that's made them so much more money than in the past. Like From Software was always kind of a weird company. They always kind of made it offbeat games.
Lost Kingdoms.
Yeah, just like stuff that people didn't really grasp onto. I mean, the only other games that I really liked from them were the Jumping Flash games.
They did Jumping Flash?
Yeah.
They did the Jumping Flash games. And
I liked Armored Core.
Yeah,
that was
Armored
one of the
Core.
series that I liked about them.
See, I really tried to like Armored Core, but I think I didn't understand that they weren't supposed to be arcadey.
Well, see, I like them mainly because they're giant robots.
Yeah, yeah. I know you love your giant robots, but I'm not. I wanted it to be more actiony, like the Zone of the Enders games.
Yeah,
those
are great.
They also did a Ninja Gaiden kind of game that I didn't really like that much, but the other game that they did that I liked
was it Otage?
No, I don't remember what it's
for the
called.
original
Ninja
Xbox?
Blade. Ninja Blade.
Well, they also made Otage for the original Xbox, which
they also
is good.
did 3D Dot Heroes, which was really fun.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, that's a good game.
Yeah, I beat that game. That was great.
But I would kind of like to see them make a new game, because whether or not their games are good, they're pretty creative usually overall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if it was up to me, I'd like a new Bloodborne game or a new Souls game when they do that, or a new Armored Core game, but also I'd like to see what else they could do.
And what's interesting is even when they do different stuff, sometimes, I mean, not with Armored Core and versus, Souls, those are different games, but like sometimes it's a running theme. Like Kingsfield feels like a Souls game before a Souls game, and the Lost Kingdoms had that thing where there's this creepy fog that comes into town and then bad stuff happens. Like, it's interesting how they kind of like work their way up to releasing Souls games.
Yeah, I think that a break is good. Maybe make a couple things in between this and the next one, but I would love for them to return back to it.
Yeah,
I think that's general consensus here. Okay,
so the other two questions he asked were, I mean, this one we got to be careful with because we could really go on for a while. But what is the best or your favorite narrative experience in a game?
Again, my choices for best games of all time usually have had a very big narrative impact on me, rather than just like an action experience. Though that certainly does add to it. I would say that Mother 3 and Stranger's Wrath, Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, are two of the best narrative experiences in a video game. They made me go like, what? Like, while I was playing them, and like just kind of like filled me with like emotion while playing those games. So I would say those two. Definitely.
Yeah, I'd say definitely Mother 3. I actually almost went to tears at the end.
Yeah, Vyse said that too. Like that hit...
I actually cried.
No, that hit me, but not as hard as the beginning. The beginning, freaking, that was rough.
Yeah, that too. Both of those moments.
I can't think of many other games. I mean, I'm more of a gameplay first kind of person. Mm-hmm. So even if I'll enjoy the story, if the gameplay isn't interesting, I probably wouldn't stick with it to see what happens. There have been a few games where the story was interesting enough that I wanted to stick with it. Let's say Xenoblade, and it didn't do enough for me to stick. The gameplay didn't do enough for me to stick with it.
Sure.
Okay. For me, it's kind of hard. I mean, Silent Hill 2 really had me, even though the character himself, the delivery was, or not the delivery, the personality was a little bit flat. The way the game played out and the delivery of the lines from James Sunderland, like, really got me invested in caring about this character and seeing, like, man, I hope he finds his wife. And, like, the more stuff is revealed throughout the game, the more it kind of, like, it impacts you. But then there's something like Skies of Arcadia, which is very, it's a fun story, but one thing that I'm always a sucker for, like this gets me every time, is something where you either have nothing or you are reduced to nothing, but you take your situation and you turn it around. So, like, there's a part in Skies of Arcadia where, like, you have a crash or an explosion or something, you go flying off your ship, and you land on some uninhabited island, and you're just like, well, I guess I'm just here now. So the first thing you do is just gather sticks and, like, gather food for fire and food, so you can survive the night, killing a couple of animals on the way. But eventually, this island becomes your base. Like, you've always been part of a crew, but now, like, this is your headquarters, you built it. And you can, choose to, erect certain buildings and certain styles and organize your crew there, and the place eventually becomes amazing. And that's not really necessarily plot, but that is a significant part of the game where you kind of, like, build yourself up literally and figuratively, and I just really enjoy that kind of stuff. And
that's my favorite. That's my favorite moment in the game.
Yeah,
and I also like other games that have that kind of thing. Like Soul Blazer has that as well on the Super Nintendo. It's the predecessor to Illusion of Gaia, and Terranigma, and also the Suikoden games are all like that.
Yeah, I really want to play those. Also, Valkyria Chronicles has, the first one at least, has this whole. The motif of the game is that it's being told via you're reading a history book, except for the very beginning of the game. There is, I guess, beginning of chapters, there's some narration, but it's really interesting to see, like, let me tell you the chronicles of how this went down, and you play through all the chapters and you see how you progressed in the war and everything like that. And I was really invested in the characters in Valkyria Chronicles. Skies of Arcadia had really cool characters, but I wasn't necessarily invested in all of their personalities as much as I was with Valkyria Chronicles to the main people. Like, they really get you attached to them, especially because some of the secondary characters can die if you kind of allow it to happen. It's like Fire Emblem, the story characters never die permanently, but everyone else can, so you're like, oh no, don't let it happen. So, that game, it was really fun seeing that play out. So those were all really good ones.
I feel like that's narrative.
Stories don't stick with me as much. I've been trying to think of the other games that might have I've had really good enjoyment with. I mean, obviously I could say the Persona or Mega 10 games, but that's again more because I like the game more so than the story. The only story that's really stuck with me is Mother 3.
Okay, I would say that Lotus's picks are really cool in that's a narrative element that pretty much only a video game can pull off. I mean, you could probably have that in a television series, like you could see a town build up over time. But I think that's really cool that, like, a video game can show progress like that.
Yeah, you usually it would be like montaged, so you get it, but you don't get you don't really feel the impact and the significance of, like, I had to work to make this happen.
Yeah, Dark Cloud also has that element as well.
That's true. That's like a lot of the game, actually, building up the towns and everything.
I really enjoyed that about those games.
Yeah.
Especially 2.
Yeah, with 2 you had the past and the future versions. That was super cool.
So I think we hit the nail on the head with those. I think those are all big good picks.
So I think we have time for just one more, and it's the last of his questions. I think you're gonna like this one. Favorite game with a well executed twist, and you don't have to spoil the actual twist.
Well, I mean, Bloodborne's up there.
Yeah, that was some reveal when you first see what the game is. Oh my god.
Cyberlip.
That actually. I wouldn't put that in my favorite anything, but that was a pretty sweet twist.
Yeah, no, that's it. Other than the 2 games that I already mentioned before, I mean, like narratively speaking, those are great narratively, but they also have good twists. Mother 3 and Oddworld: Stranger's Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the reason why they're so good. But Cyberlip.
That actually is a surprisingly good twist for anyone who knows what the hell that is. To be redundant, yeah, Silent Hill 2, that was a really good twist. That took me by surprise. And the interesting thing is the game hints at it for most of the game, but you either don't notice or you don't realize that that's what it's doing. It's one of those things where when you play it through a second time, you're like, oh my god, that's what that meant, stuff like that. So it's well, like, what I like about a twist is when it's not bullshit, like they're actually like it's not just like, and then
there's meaning behind
and
it.
Then he was the father the whole time, like just out of nowhere, where they just throw something at you for the sake of having a twist. Like if it actually makes sense that this could have been a thing that happened, then I respect it all the more, rather than just like let's trick the player for no real good reason. So like that was a very, very well crafted and executed twist. Definitely.
Danganronpa has a really good twist too, the original.
Does it ever?
Yeah.
That one's really
good. And so does 2.
And
I don't know about 2.
I'm still getting to 2, but yeah, with Danganronpa 1 though, what's also cool about that twist is that, I mean, I'm not going to say this on camera or on the podcast because that would be giving too much away, but I could talk to you, Pyro, off camera about this, but like that, well, both of you guys, but that actually also had hints that set it up that were like really, one of them was just plain subtle, and another one you actually had to go out of your way to find, because like in our Let's Play of the game, we didn't have an opportunity to even encounter it. So like it's really well done. I don't know, like some games, I mean, Final Fantasy VII is not my favorite game. I haven't even played it, but that had a good twist. If you could call it a twist, it's just like people don't expect that kind of thing to happen, at least at the time.
I guess in a game like that, like, no one would have expected that.
And it hadn't really happened before either. So like especially at the time, that was kind of like, what, really? Like that was a pretty good one.
Metal Gear Solid 5's twist is some people that's really divisive, but I like it.
Actually, speaking of which, Metal Gear Solid 2's twist, oh damn, like that whole end of the game, like what?
It's a lot better in retrospect, but when you were playing the game, you were actually mad at it.
What in 2?
Yeah, people
kind of
that.
Yeah.
But now in retrospect, people were saying it was genius.
It was fantastic. I also actually really like, you know how each Metal Gear Solid game ends with like after the credits, there's like a phone conversation or a codec conversation, and it reveals just one more like punchline. 1s and 2s really got me. It just like, and I remember playing with Luminaire. We played 2, 3, and 4 together. We just like took turns as the story progressed. But 1, I just played for him in college, Twin Snakes, and he had one of those like what reactions at the Ocelot phone conversation at the end of 1, because I was like, are you kidding me? Like, oh, where does this go from here? So that was really well done as well. That at this point though, I think is all the time we have for questions. But that was really good.
Absolutely. So I want to also thank everybody, our loyal listeners who have given us a lot of really good feedback on the new formats of the show, with the reactive being in the later half of the week. So keep giving us that feedback, guys. Keep telling us what you want from the show and from us. And we're progressing. We actually have like some milestones that we're working on right now. So you will see some new Corrective Consciousness content in the near future. We have a lot of really cool stuff going on, and when it's just about ready, we're going to announce it. So I really want to thank everybody, and please keep giving us likes and thumbs ups on SoundCloud, on iTunes, and YouTube, and please keep giving us more questions. We will need to bank as many as we can.
We have a lot, but we could always use more.
Oh, and one thing SoundCloud listeners will notice is that I changed the URL of the show. to actually have the Corrective Consciousness name rather than VyseTheBold. So the URL's changed, the page name has changed, so everything is up to date with it going along with the Corrective Consciousness project in general. So please look for us there, and we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.